Thank you everyone for joining us for the IHA webinar. We're focused on Cuisinart's business case and how they bridge the physical and the digital in their organization. Some housekeeping before we dive right into it. Feel free to ask questions. There's a control panel at the right of the screen. All you have to do is expand the window, submit your questions, and we will answer the questions at the end of the webinar. Also, we will be recording this webinar and we will send it out, and you can also view it at housewares.org. So introducing our two presenters. Today we have Mary Rogers, Director of Marketing Communications at Cuisinart and Waring, and she has had over 20 years of experience marketing all aspects of the housewares and tabletop business at Cuisinart. She oversees consumer marketing, trade advertising, PR, consumer promotions, and sponsorships. And under her leadership, Cuisinart has won quite a few awards for the marketing campaigns from several industry organizations. Her 20 years of experience, she's seen how things have changed in terms of going from physical to digital, the full digital transformation, and we're so happy that Mary is able to join us today. Also, we have Ben Lockett, VP of Consumer Appliances and Outdoor Goods. Ben has some interesting experience as the former tank commander in the British Army. He also oversees registry of solutions for clients in the consumer appliances and outdoor goods industries. Today, he's going to share some business cases across several of the clients at Registria, and we will see how the trends have evolved over the last few years. And right now, I'm going to hand it over to Mary Rogers. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me today. I just want to give you a quick overview of the presentation topics that I'm going to speak to today. I'm going to just give you an overview of Cuisinart's business and some of the challenges in both our business and the industry in general. I'm going to speak a little bit about how the CMO's role is in a decentralized organization, and I will also give you some outlines of how we're driving strategy and making smarter choices that help us impact our business. And kind of just an overview of how our efforts are shaping all aspects of digital. I'm going to speak a little bit about measurable KPIs, which you know, can be different for everyone. So I'm just going to tell you how I go about it. And then I will give you some of my lessons learned, some of the things that, you know, I'll admit I made a few mistakes here and there, but overall, at the end of the day, we learned a lot, and we're very successful in some of these efforts. So with that, let's get right into it. So just as an overview, Cuisinart is part of parent company Conair Corporation. Conair Corporation is a global industry leader in many different categories. We are highly decentralized. We also have a very entrepreneurial environment. The company basically was started by our owner with $100, and he actually launched the first pistol grip hair dryer, and that's what Conair is known for. And they actually bought the Cuisinart brand in the late 80s. And Cuisinart in itself is one of the #1 brands in retail housewares, one of the most important vendors in small appliances and cookware. We are known historically for launching the first food processor in the United States for consumers, and that was in 1973. And since then, our business has grown very extensively. We offer kind of a good, better, best assortment, but we focus on innovation in the high-end part of our line, and we represent almost every category in the kitchen, and we also are working with a licensee, Fulham Group, in the outdoor grilling categories. Our major channels of distribution focus upon specialty department, online clubs, grocery, a premium incentive, and also some mass business. So Cuisinart today, what are some of our current challenges? Some of these speak to the business in general, and some of these speak very specifically to our business. So as we all know, in the industry, there's been a huge shift in consumer shopping behavior. It continues to become more dramatic in the industry and in business in general. We've seen a significant drop in in-store traffic, but on the other hand, in-store sales still represent a very large portion of overall business in our categories. Transparent pricing to the consumer has been an ongoing challenge for everyone in the industry, and it also has caused a lot of angst for many different retailers and different channels. Some of the biggest retailers in the industry have become very mature in their business, and sometimes it's also very difficult when you're in a large organization in a mature situation. It's very hard to change. In general, we've seen many lifestyle shifts within our own consumer base. For instance, consumers used to be taking a very linear life stage approach, but now consumers pretty much are all over the map in that area. So that's something we really spend a lot of time thinking about. Some of the challenges that are specific to Cuisinart are basically some of the things I'm going to talk about today: integration of technology into work process, where I've found that oftentimes it's very hard to change the behavior of employees. So that's something I'll speak to in a little bit. And then for myself, the amount of time and ownership and effort that I need to use to make sure all of my agency partners or partners in general are engaging in using these new technologies for the best purpose. And obviously, one of the #1 challenges is continuing to grow our business. And then when I speak a little bit about tech's impact on the CMO, I think that many of us in marketing are finding that we're spending a lot more time on all digital aspects of the business, not just digital sales, but there's a big move in the industry in general on how brands are going to transform and what that should look like in the future. I've also spent an enormous amount of time wrangling agencies. I found that I've spent a lot more time working on data and needing to be more of an expert on data and data analysis. And then the other thing that is the biggest impact is it's no longer just testing ideas and then deploying them. There's a lot more involved in finding solutions to business problems and also working across many silos, both inside and outside the company. And philosophically, I kind of have this overall arching theme in my practice, and that is that I don't let technology impede my strategies. I try to stay true to my strategies no matter what I'm doing. And then the biggest thing is using the tools, these tools that we have at the ready, desktop tools that are tied to data collection and technology. Getting people trained and engaged is taking a lot of time on behalf of the CMO. So I like to show this slide because it kind of shows you like the old school methodology of how we were going about business and now what we're doing. And so basically on the left-hand side, you basically, you'd be driving along in the car, or you would be, puttering around the house and you come up with some idea or something inspires you. And, you would basically test it and see if it worked, retry it, analyze it, and then start along the same cycle all over again. But now we've moved on to a much more sophisticated approach to business. We're using many different tools, of which 3 of them I'm going to speak to today, that are helping us make really smart decisions and find that we're being much more successful in our approach to marketing. So there's 3 major platforms, and each of them is a different technology. We have a social listening platform, a channel management platform, and a consumer data platform. And the consumer data platform is Registria, who I'm speaking along with today, and I'll get more into depth in that. But basically, the social listening platform is used for all types of research and innovation and asking very broad questions or very narrow questions that allow us to customize our marketing campaigns, basically. Channel management system is basically helping us close the sales loop and making the path to purchase for our consumer much more efficient. And lastly, the data collection, the registry system, is basically data that we collect on actual purchases that consumers make and understanding their preferences and understanding how to use that data to make adjustments in both our market research and also we're using it very specifically for product development. So with that, our social listening platform, currently we work with a company called NetBase. They are an amazing company to work with. They have a great tool that we use for everything, for developing content to research, but basically one of the key areas that we were using it for is understanding our first-time, what we call our first-time consumers, and this is very common in our industry in general. Many of the brands are first bringing consumers to the business when it comes to registering product for when they're about to get married. But on the other hand, we wanted to really know, like, what were some of the subject matters these consumers were conversing around? How could we get ourselves, you know, embedded into those conversations, but how could we also serve them with content that was meaningful to them? And also, we're also using this to understand more about life stage and life stage analysis. We also are using this obviously very specifically. This is an example of custom content that we used specific to this consumer group. So here's another example of some strategic content development. We wanted to become much more successful at some of the video content that we were developing, and we're using this platform to understand what types of videos that consumers want to see, because videos are becoming core to the cooking conversation. Consumers are very engaged in these very quick snippet, tasty type videos, and they're consuming a lot of them. But we wanted to gain more insight into what consumers wanted to see, and we then used what we learned to develop specific content for those consumers. And we found this to be a very successful approach for us, and we had amazing positive feedback from our consumers. So this is an example of our channel management system that we use. We're currently working with Channel IQ. This was instituted in an effort to make it much easier for our consumers to purchase product. So when they come to our website to explore our product assortment, they are able to go directly to the same exact product on a retailer's web page, which was something that we had struggled with in the past, because the way our business works, we don't necessarily know very efficiently where the product ends up in a store. So we're able to use this channel management system, which is programmed based on pricing strategies, different pricing strategies that one can use. But it also drives the consumer directly to our retailers that the product is in stock and current on. And it also allows us to focus on retailers that stay within pricing strategy. This was something I spoke to at the very beginning of how transparent pricing is causing a lot of angst in our industry, and this helps us, you know, push our consumers to retailers who are within our pricing philosophy. But it also allows us the ability to track and analyze consumer behavior and conversion. You can see on the left-hand side, you know, there's sales conversion rates. You can calculate average ticket. You can see how many people that you pass through the funnel. This is something that's been new and different for us and gives us a great insight into how our consumers are behaving. So this is the registry of platform that we use. You can see on the left there is an example of a photo register card, which is how they refer to it. You can see on the bottom left-hand corner there's an icon that says Cuisinart. This consumers can take a photo of it. They can send it in via smartphone, text, Facebook Messenger, or they can even go kind of semi-old school and go right online and register. But the reason that we went with this system is because it's a really fast and easy way for consumers to register. Previously, the only way that they could do it was just to go directly online and sign in online and go through the registration process. So this helps us to improve our consumer experience. It also makes our data collection seamless, and it also enables us to aftermarket to consumers immediately. The other thing that we use it for is also market research. We're able to, let's say, cull consumers out of the database who bought a very specific product and reach out to them and, possibly survey them on specific actions that our product developers are interested in pursuing or understanding more about. So this has also helped us increase the amount of consumers who are actually registering for a product. We had huge increases in that, which makes it great for us because the more people who register, the more data we're able to collect and the better understanding we have of our consumer and their wants and needs. And the next phase that we're going through is integration into our customer service call center, which is, we work with a third party in Florida, and we want to be able to have our reps, when a consumer calls in, know exactly what types of products and exact model numbers those consumers registered for. And it really helps them, in turn, speed up the call, serve the consumer faster, and it also enables us to present ourselves to our consumer as, providing top-of-the-line, first-class service. So I spoke earlier about KPIs. If it's important, measure it, and this is an example of a brand and competitive analysis that I keep my eye on very currently. And my advice here is you have to find out what's important to you, what's important to your business, and what is it that you want to improve. Like, there's examples here: mentions, posts, potential impressions, net sentiment, and passion intensity. So you also notice the competitors here some are quite large. We have Cuisinart, Nespresso, KitchenAid, and Breville. A company like Nespresso is really a CPG company, so I find it hard to benchmark myself against them because of their sheer volume and the amount of money that they also spend on marketing and advertising in general. KitchenAid is in a similar situation where they also sell large appliances and we don't, so there's some scale difference there. And then there's also Breville, who is more of a kind of an upstart, in a way similar to Cuisinart. So I would just suggest that when you're thinking about these things as a marketer, you're thinking about how big are my competitors, how can I compete against them, and pick one of the things that you can actually measure and benchmark yourself against them, and use that as a guide. That's how I go about it. Some of the things that are important to me are things like net sentiment or passion intensity, because those are things I can actually understand how my consumer feels directly about me and my competitors. If I tried to benchmark myself against potential impressions, I may lose there all the time, and I may not be able to compete on the same scale that some of the bigger brands are. So I would just say, think really hard about how you want to measure yourself, but you need to measure it. And then lastly, some of the lessons I've learned one of the things that I did was each one of these types of technologies I actually integrated into our business in the same 12-month period. So that was one of the hardest things that I actually accomplished. I would suggest that maybe you should, if this is a new area for you, basically try to focus on things that you know that you can actually handle and digest, because this is oftentimes these projects that you spearhead are over and above the actual other real marketing work that you're doing. So try to be unlike me and be realistic. The other thing that's been very important too is I work very closely with our Chief Information Officer in a partnership. We've found that I've done great things for him where he's now able to use me as a benchmark on, for instance, NetBase. I was the first division of the company to execute on that, and he's then used what I've done and then gotten other divisions to sign on to that type of activity. So that's also something like your success can be the success of other people too. It may not work the way you envisioned. Specifically with the Registria system, something I didn't think of at all was we have a lot of exclusive product that we sell to many different retailers, and I know many of our competitors do the same thing. that we did not program the system to accept every single SKU that we made. So we had to make adjustments for that after we rolled it out. And sometimes getting the kinks out, it takes a lot of effort also. And that exclusive model number system is one of the things that, was so obvious that it was overlooked. Sometimes you have to think very deep about your actions and how it's going to impact the consumer. And for me, the most important thing is that most important piece of advice I could give anybody is that you have to work with technology companies that partner with you in your success and on an ongoing relationship. It's not something that you plug in and that's the end of it. It's an ongoing relationship and you need to put the effort into it. So with that, thank you for listening today. And now I'm going to turn it over to Ben at Registria. He's going to give you some great case studies.
Thanks, Mary, and thanks everyone for joining today's webinar. I'm hoping to connect my presentation with the headline of today's webinar, that of bridging the physical and digital. Registria is a company that connects brands with the people that buy them. They're also known as your customers, not only connecting with them after a retail purchase, but also how to monetize that relationship. Registria enables brands to deliver simple, digital, and impactful moments on their smartphone and to use this timely, frictionless onboarding event to initiate an ongoing customer relationship. And the slide that we have up right now shows just some of the consumer electronics and household appliance companies that we work with today. On slide 11 of Mary's presentation, she mentioned that improving the onboarding experience provides Cuisinart customers with the ability to market to customers immediately, and typically that happens within about 48 hours of them making a retail purchase. In our experience, this means that every time a consumer has an awesome experience with a brand, it raises the bar for what she expects from other brands. But when that bar isn't met, it can have serious effects on that brand. Consumers have 2 times more interactions with brands on mobile than anywhere else. And historically, marketers consider it a job done after a prospect has made it along a linear path from awareness through consideration to purchase. But now, the new registration-initiated lifecycle is potentially infinite, and digital onboarding begins a direct relationship with your customer. Engaging a customer who has already brought something from you, in other words, they have already been receptive to your messaging, means that we are extending lifetime value to include ratings and reviews, e-commerce, and extended service plan offers. We also know, all of us, that acquiring a customer is 5 times more expensive than selling to the customers that you already have. And Registria provides a way to increase those numbers of customers in your database and who we can market to. In other words, avoiding shooting fish in a barrel and moving to making intelligent data-driven decisions, to quote Mary from a previous slide. So to give you an understanding and insight into the data that we've collected here and moving down some of the case studies to which Mary referred to, we analyzed 10 years worth of customer data, which is about how long Registria has been working in the product registration space. And we created our 2017 report that we titled Consumer Trends in Product Registration. It's a great weekend read, I promise you. Happy to share that report with you. My email address, along with Mary's and other contact information, will be shown at the end of this presentation. Please shoot me an email if you'd like to receive that trend report. But this 10-year snapshot shows how brands connect with their customers has changed massively. And note that paper registration channel has shrunk to only 25%. Digital registration, not even a thing 10 years ago, now accounts for 45%. It's also important to note that registering using chatbot and personal assistants like Alexa and Facebook Messenger, while small today, were the fastest growing registration channels in 2016. Not shown here, but I also want to point out that data accuracy, often a problem when we were trying to decipher bad penmanship on a paper card, is now at almost 100%. As a result of these changes, moving from analog to digital registration, rates have now jumped from around 12%, and that's actually quite high, to closer to 30 to 35%. Completion rates are now closer to 90%, and warranty attachment rates are now closer to 9%. Here is another example of what Mary was talking about and how Cuisinart is using Registry to deliver an onboarding moment to their customers. No more filling out those postcards. All the customer has to do is snap a photo, text it in, no app required, use Facebook Messenger or go online, and the 15-second registration process is complete. Again, we'll be sharing this deck with today's attendants, and if you click on the URL there, you'll see a link to a video on YouTube which shows how Cuisinart is putting this card in a very visible spot at the top of every single product box. These smartphone-based digital onboarding events are, it turns out now, able to identify 2 to 4 times more buyers than we were with previous ways to register a product. Think of that as a way that you are now getting 2 to 4 times more of your retail purchases into your customer database that you can market to. These onboarding events are used by companies and our clients to then take their customers on triggered email-based journeys. And because of the fact that these typically start within 48 hours of the retail purchase, conversations are incredibly timely, leading to massive increased rates of success. In terms of, I've already mentioned before, extended service plan sales are showing 3 to 10% attachment rates. Accessory sales are between 3 and 5%. Engagement emails are more than 2 to 3 times more successful, and becoming more and more important is the fact that ratings and reviews are showing more and more 4 and 5-star scores. So on the subject of case studies, I just wanted to identify these 4 brands that we're working with. The first one is Allclad, and the fact that they are driving 8 times return on investment on what they term their VIP buyers and their loyalty program. 36% increase in year-on-year revenue through the sales that they drive through that triggered email mechanism. Cuisinart, as we are talking about today with Mary, are seeing 2x registrations, and they're being able to track retail purchase patterns and measure brand sentiment. Whirlpool improved average ratings in their ratings and review program to 4 to 5 stars, and I'll come on to that in a bit more detail in a minute. And Nordic Track are seeing 4 times more leads coming through this registration programs and have generated an additional $15 per registered buyer. So my last 4 slides show the impact of using customer onboarding to initiate a digital journey. I've mentioned the idea of being able to make extended service plan offers, not only just at the point of registration, or POR as we would refer to it, but also the entire extended service plan marketing program through to renewal. And you'll see here that the chart shows attachment rates as they relate to these registration rates. It's worth pointing out that client A is making these offers throughout the entire marketing lifecycle, and you'll see that their product registration rates are now greater than 40%. Their attachment rates are almost, if not exactly, it's a couple of points below 10%, which is hugely greater than most ESP programs are going. As I mentioned previously, if we invite customers to leave ratings and reviews on platforms like Bazaar Voice or Power Reviews, about 30 days or so after a registration, conversations that's typically driven through an email dialogue, we've seen huge successes in metrics that can be massively significant. If we just look at brand A in this example, before they integrated ratings and reviews into their post-registration customer journey, over 9 months, they actually only saw 514 reviews with an average star rating of only 2.22. Scroll forward now to 6 months after they initiated the program, and they've massively improved the review rate, almost 9,000 now, and their star rating, as I mentioned before, has now moved to 4.5. I also love the fact that that Net Promoter Score in the blue circle on the right-hand side has jumped from 25% to almost 90%. This is a case study from a brand of ours, an electronics client of ours. And as we see here, more products that are registered by their customers, the greater their email response rates are from those customers. And you'll see here that response rates are moving from a baseline of 3.19 to 8% for customers that register 3 products. And these customers are 2.5 times more likely to respond to any emails as measured by click-through rate. And the last slide in my presentation today is another global appliance brand that has found that customers that registered using Registria's digital onboarding platform, as they compare to other customer interaction channels, show the most engagement as measured by interactions per customers, and that this metric continues to show year-on-year growth. So with that being said, I hope I was able to take you through an understanding of what Registria is and some of the case studies that we are able to highlight some of the success that we've had here. I'd now like to hand things back to Debbie for questions, and thank you very much for your time today.
Okay, we have a few questions here. Thank you, Mary and Ben. This one I think is for Mary. How do you approach actually selling product on your site rather than passing consumer on to the retailers? And how do you choose whose site to send them to should the search come in from a generic search?
So basically, 2 things. I should state also that we actually are not selling our product direct to consumer. So philosophically, our corporation believes in working with our premier retail partners. And so what we do is we have the system programmed so that it knows a formula based on selling price. And if it falls within that selling price and they are also one of our premier retail partners, it will the consumer will be sent directly to the product on the retailer. There's many retailers that fall into that category for each individual product. You know, they would basically be, they have the choice of who they would choose from, but when they click on the logo of the retailer, it brings them directly to that product on the retailer website.
Great. And another question, in the brand competitor analysis chart, how is Mary gathering the information?
So that information is data that I set up using our net-based social listening platform, which is licensed software that we use, and we set up several different types of reports, of which that happens to be one of them, and that's where I gather the data from.
Okay, and then what are some of the newest technologies you're considering implementing into your marketing work?
So one of the biggest projects that I'm spearheading at the moment is a marketing content management system. So this is a big undertaking for us as a corporation. It involves both marketing and sales, and it's going to allow us to improve our speed to market and brand consistency across any channel. It also will help our field sales force spend less time collecting assets and delivering them onto retailer platforms. So that's something that we're in the midst of at the moment, and we hope to have it executed by the first of the year.
Great. Who are the digital agencies you work with?
So we work with, I have a tendency to prefer smaller agencies where I'm in direct partnership with the owner operators. We prefer kind of smaller to mid-sized agencies. I work with a company called BPS out of New York. They are my digital marketing agency. I work with another company who is in Manhattan, previously known as Traffic Buyers. Now their name is Blacklight. They focus specifically on digital advertising. And I work with many other different types of agencies and also third-party vendor partners in technology.
How does Registria gather information, and can it be downloaded and uploaded into MailChimp or Sendinblue?
Great question. So we gather, the data that's gathered is provided by the consumer when they go through the registration process. On their smartphone, they're entering first name, last name, email address, and frankly, any other information that you want to capture. That is passed to our Amazon Web Services cloud, and then we would share that information with our clients through, preferably through an API, or we can also send that information to our clients through a secure FTP transfer on typically a daily basis. So we've integrated with multiple platforms. We've integrated with MailChimp, we've integrated with JDS, we've integrated with SAP and Salesforce. In this day and age of the sort of the age of the API, connecting through that sort of interface is pretty standard for us.
Great. Somebody wants to know, I believe this is for Mary, have you picked a company for marketing content management?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
I suppose they want to know who it is.
Say that.
So I'm planning on partnering with a company called Salsify.
Okay, great. How much time and energy do you expend on making considerations for new technology implementation?
Well, I right now I think it's significant. I want to be very open-minded about new technology and new technology offerings, because honestly, all three of the ones I use as examples today were people who, either approached me, or we actually used, in the case of NetBase, we actually used a consultant to help us find the best platform for the company corporately, globally, basically. So that was a little bit different, but my strategy is to be open-minded, to keep my eye on incoming emails or people that I meet at conferences, because I feel like if you're not open to it, you are not going to be able to move your business forward, because all of these things have become so important to all business, not just in our industry.
Okay. Next, can you cite some examples of how technology has affected speed to connect that triggers the start of the customer journey?
Well, yeah, thank you, Ben.
So another great question. Thank you. So the key here is that speed to connection, and creating this sort of idea of a frictionless, which I mentioned before, and it's sort of easy experience, and really, the idea of using a mobile or cell phone is just one piece of that puzzle. And if, as is often the case these days, that experience requires an app download or too much data entry by the customer. I mentioned, the ability for a consumer to be able to enter data into their smartphone as they're going through the registration experience. It's worth noting that in our experience, just asking some very important questions on that first screen, name, last name, email address, potentially, where did you get the product from, and leaving it at that on the first page then asking some of the secondary questions on the second and third pages leads to a higher registration rate. But registrations will not improve if we just rely on an app or if we just ask for too much data. So our focus has been to make this as easy as possible. And once it's easy to register, it goes without saying that more people will register. The more people that register with us will enable us to take customers on an immediately triggered customer journey. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you for that one. It was a good one.
Okay, we just got another question. What is the best program, database program for PR practitioners to use for news and press releases? And also for compiling influencer databases?
So I'm going to speak to the second half of that because it ties into one of the examples I gave. So one of the things that we're using our net-based platform for is influencer discovery. We are doing that and then putting it into a database system. I'm not a database expert. My digital agency is the one maintaining our database platforms. So specific to that, I can't speak to that at this point. And I want to be honest.
So from a registrar perspective, I think we have built a database ourselves, a SQL-based data solution, which is it's like a warehouse has been logically arranged to specifically maximize registration type data. And I think that would be, if it was based on sort of product registration data, I would look for a partner that specialized in that logical database structure, specifically around product registration data.
Okay, and our last question. Other than digital preference over paper, how has technology impacted who is registering their products over the last decade?
Yep. So it's crazy to think that the current generation or most of the current generation of buyers don't actually remember a time without the world of the internet or cell phones. I can't say I'm in that category, but there are many people out there like that. Believe it or not, the iPhone's actually been around, I think, now for about 10 years. So customer expectations, especially among sort of millennial types and Gen Z, have changed so much with each new technology advancement that it makes everyday tasks easier and faster. So really our focus at Registry has been to piggyback on those devices and apps that consumers already use, like a social messaging platform, Facebook, Line, WeChat, etc., mobile camera apps, etc., to make product registration and the ownership of that experience much faster and easier. So that really is what we have seen over the last 10 years or so.
Okay. Oh, we just got one more question. Between ratings and reviews and registration companies like net-based and content companies, which would you start with if you haven't used any of them?
So maybe, Mary, I'll answer this question first. You may have an input. I think from our perspective, we would always be Switzerland when it came to making recommendations like that. Having said that, the platforms that I've mentioned of Bazaar Voice and Power Reviews are certainly ones that we see being used very heavily in the marketplace, and we've integrated with both those. I see a young sort of upcoming platform like Yotpo starting to eat into that market. But those would be the ones that I would look at. I do know that either Forrester or Gartner do create their waves or radar charts on those platforms, and that might be a place that I would also start if I was looking for that.
I could just add a little bit to that. This space has been heavily driven in our categories by Bazaar Voice because they have basically made the relationship with the retailer and then hold the brand in that way. I would agree with both things that Ben said. Power Reviews, and also Bazaar Voice are currently the two major players in the marketplace. We have spoken to other people ourselves, but I've found that you know, the hardest thing in this space that we're struggling with is being able to analyze the data at this point.
Yeah.
And I did speak to Ben about this quite a while ago, about being able to integrate that data into our net-based platform so that we could actually be able to analyze it. So that's something that is on our docket also.
Perfect. Okay, well, I think that wraps it up. Thank you very much again, Mary and Ben, and have a nice day.
Thank you so much for having me.
No problem.
Thank you very much indeed. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.